How moms quietly build real wealth from home. The coffee had gone cold again. She stared at it for a moment, this lukewarm reminder of another morning slipping away. Around her, the house hummed with noise cartoons playing, toys scattered, voices calling for her attention. But beneath it all, there was this quiet question she kept pushing down. Can I really build something of my own? She wasn't chasing millions. That was never the dream. What she wanted was freedom, the kind that fits between nap times and school pickups, the kind that doesn't require asking permission or explaining herself. Just the ability to create something that was hers, even if it was small. For months, she'd been scrolling through success stories, watching other women build businesses from their living rooms. Part of her felt inspired. Another part felt impossibly far behind. Like the race had started years ago, and she'd somehow missed the starting gun. But the idea didn't come from a business book or a viral post. It came from the mess on her kitchen table, a skill she'd forgotten she had, a problem she'd solved for a friend without thinking twice. Something so ordinary, she almost dismissed it entirely. What would you have done in her place? She started therein, that small, unremarkable moment. No grand launch, no perfect plan, just a single step forward, taken while the kids watched their morning shows. And what she discovered was that wealth, the real kind, doesn't always announce itself. It builds quietly in the margins of ordinary days. According to recent data, home-based businesses led by women have grown 40% faster than other business segments over the past 5 years. Not because these women had more time or resources, but because they learned to work with what they had. Clarity, it turns out, often beats capital. Part of her still felt guilty for wanting more, as if ambition had to disappear the moment motherhood began, as if building something for herself somehow meant taking something away from her family. The weight of that guilt was real heavy in ways that didn't make logical sense but felt true nonetheless. Maybe success just wasn't meant for someone like her. That's what the voice in her head kept saying, the one that compared her kitchen counter workspace to the polished offices she saw online, the one that whispered she was starting too late, too tired, too ordinary. Then came the doubt, the kind that whispers louder than failure. She'd made her first sale on a Tuesday afternoon. $27. Not enough to change her life, but enough to change something inside her. Because it proved that the gap between wanting and doing was smaller than she'd thought. That the distance between idea and income could be measured in hours, not years. She smiled, not because it was easy. The path she was walking had been walked before, by thousands of women who'd discovered the same truth. You don't need permission to start small. You don't need a business degree or a flawless 5-year plan. You need one skill, one problem to solve, and the willingness to begin before you feel ready. The first pathway many mothers discover is service-based work that leverages skills they already have. Virtual assistance, for instance, has become one of the most accessible entry points. Companies need help with email management, scheduling, customer service, and administrative tasks. The work is flexible, the demand is real, and the barrier to entry is remarkably low. She learned this not from a course, but from a conversation with another mom at pickup. Someone who'd started answering emails for a small business owner 3 hours a week and had gradually built it into something that paid her mortgage. The transformation wasn't dramatic. It was incremental, almost invisible to anyone watching from the outside. Sometimes growth doesn't look like progress, it looks like staying. Another avenue that keeps appearing is content creation for small businesses, not the kind that requires a film crew or a marketing agency. We're talking about writing product descriptions, managing social media posts, creating email newsletters. Small businesses are drowning in the need for consistent, authentic content, and many can't afford full-time marketing teams. She almost gave up until one message changed everything. A local bakery needed someone to write their weekly email newsletter. 2 hours of work, once a week, paid for in advance. She said yes before the fear could catch up with her. And in that yes, she discovered something crucial. Businesses aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for reliability, for someone who shows up and solves a specific problem consistently. The second wave of opportunity lives in digital products. This is where many mothers find themselves after they've built some confidence with service work. Because digital products, templates, printables, guides, courses offer something service work doesn't: the ability to earn while you sleep. She created her first digital product on a Friday night after the kids were asleep. A meal planning template she'd designed for herself and had shared with friends who kept asking for copies. She listed it for $9. Within a week, 7 strangers had bought it. 7 people she'd never met had exchanged their money for something she'd created. Her workspace was still her kitchen counter, but it no longer felt like chaos. It felt like possibility. The numbers might sound small to someone watching from the outside, but they represented something larger than revenue. They represented proof that her ideas had value, proof that she could create something people wanted, proof that she wasn't just dreaming, she was building. Research shows that digital product businesses run by solo entrepreneurs have some of the highest profit margins in the online space, often exceeding 70%. Because once you've created the product, each additional sale costs almost nothing to fulfill. The work you do once can pay you repeatedly. But here's what no one tells you at the beginning. The product isn't really the product. The transformation is. What you're actually selling is a solution to a problem, a shortcut to a result, a feeling of relief or accomplishment. The format, whether it's a PDF or a video course or a spreadsheet, is just the delivery vehicle. She learned this the hard way after her first few products barely sold. She'd created what she thought was valuable, but she hadn't asked whether anyone actually needed it. The shift came when she started listening, reading comments, joining groups, paying attention to the questions that kept appearing over and over. What would you have done differently? Handmade products represent another path, though it's more labor-intensive than digital offerings. Mothers who've built successful handmade businesses all emphasize the same thing. You have to love the making, not just the selling, because the work is manual and scaling requires either raising prices significantly or finding ways to streamline production. She knew a woman who made custom baby blankets. Each one took her about 4 hours to complete, and she sold them for $75. After materials and platform fees, she was earning roughly $15 an hour less than she could make doing virtual assistant work. But she kept going because the work itself brought her joy. Because seeing photos of babies wrapped in something she'd created with her hands felt like a different kind of wealth. Sometimes the math doesn't make sense on paper, but the life does. Print-on-demand services have opened up another avenue that combines creativity with low risk. You design t-shirts, mugs, phone cases, or wall art, and the platform handles manufacturing, shipping, and customer service. You earn a margin on each sale without ever touching inventory or dealing with logistics. The barrier here isn't technical skill, it's taste and marketing. Can you create designs people want to wear or display? Can you find the audience who's looking for exactly what you've made? These questions matter more than artistic ability. Many successful print-on-demand sellers aren't trained designers. They're people who understand a niche and create for it specifically. She experimented with this for 3 months before gaining any traction, made dozens of designs that went nowhere, then created one simple text-based design that resonated with a specific community, and suddenly she was making consistent sales. Not life-changing money, but enough to prove that even without formal training, she could find her people and serve them. Then came the doubt, the kind that makes you question everything you've built. Affiliate marketing represents a path that many mothers stumble into accidentally. You recommend products you genuinely use and love, and when people purchase through your unique link, you earn a commission. The key word there is genuine. Audiences can sense inauthentic recommendations instantly, and trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild. She started sharing tools that had actually helped her: a budgeting app, a meal planning service, a specific brand of storage containers that had transformed her pantry. No sales pitch, just honest mentions of things that had solved real problems in her life. Some months she made $20 in commissions. Some months, over $200. The income was unpredictable, but required almost no additional time when she'd built the habit of sharing authentically. Online tutoring and teaching have exploded in accessibility. If you have expertise in a subject: math, languages, music, test prep, even organizational skills, there are parents and students actively searching for help. The sessions happen via video call on your schedule, paid in advance. What she discovered was that expertise doesn't require a teaching degree. It requires knowledge that's one step ahead of what the student needs. She'd been helping her own kids with math homework and realized she could offer that same help to other families. Started with 1 student, 2 hours a week. Within 6 months, she had 8 regular students and had raised her rates twice. She smiled not because she had it all figured out, but because she was learning as she went. Reselling has become a legitimate business model, especially for mothers who enjoy the hunt. Thrift stores, yard sales, clearance sections, finding undervalued items, and reselling them on platforms where buyers are actively searching. It requires an eye for value and a tolerance for inventory, but the margins can be substantial. A neighbor had built a 4-figure monthly income doing exactly this. She specialized in vintage children's books, bought them for dollars at estate sales, and sold them for $20 to $50 each to collectors and nostalgic parents. Her garage looked chaotic to outsiders, but was actually a carefully organized system that she'd refined over 2 years. The business wasn't glamorous, but it was profitable and flexible. She could source inventory while her kids were at school and list items during nap times. The income scaled with the effort she put in, which gave her control over her own ceiling. Bookkeeping and financial services for small businesses represent a higher skill entry point, but one that pays accordingly. Many small business owners are drowning in receipts and spreadsheets, desperate for someone to bring order to their finances. If you have any background in accounting or a willingness to learn bookkeeping software, this niche is consistently in demand. She'd taken a free online bookkeeping course during maternity leave, mostly to understand her own household finances better. 2 years later, that knowledge was generating $3,000 a month from 4 small business clients. The work was detail-oriented, but not time-intensive. Once systems were in place, maybe 15 hours a week total. Sometimes the most valuable skills are the ones that sound boring. Consulting and coaching have become accessible in ways that weren't possible a decade ago. If you've solved a problem that others are struggling with, whether it's sleep training, meal prep, closet organization, homeschooling, or navigating a career transition, there's an audience willing to pay for your guidance. She'd spent 3 years figuring out how to manage ADHD in her household without medication, through routine design and environmental changes. Started sharing what worked in a parenting group. Parents began messaging her privately, asking for help. She offered her first paid consultation for $30 and felt like an imposter the entire time. But the parent left with actionable strategies and messaged a week later to say their mornings had transformed. That feedback was worth more than the payment. It gave her permission to see herself differently, not as someone who'd just figured things out for her own family, but as someone who could guide others through the same journey. What helped her the most wasn't just the tools she used, was realizing she didn't need permission to start small. She tested a few different approaches before finding what truly worked for her personality and schedule. And honestly, it changed everything. This isn't about pushing any specific method. It's about understanding that the path exists, and it's more accessible than it appears from the outside. The common thread through all these paths isn't the business model, it's the mindset shift. From, I'm just a mom at home, to, I have skills, time, and problems I can solve. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments of courage, in decisions to try when the outcome isn't guaranteed, in the willingness to be imperfect in public. Recent research on women entrepreneurs indicates that mothers who start businesses during the early childhood years report higher levels of long-term satisfaction compared to those who wait until children are older. Not because the timing is easier, it's objectively harder, but because they learn to build businesses that flex around life rather than the other way around. She wasn't sure she believed that at first. It sounded like toxic positivity wrapped in research language. But 5 months in, she understood, because she'd built something that didn't require her to choose between presence and ambition. The business worked around her family's rhythm, not against it. Her revenue in the first year was modest, just under $18,000. But her expenses were minimal, her schedule was hers, and the trajectory was upward. More importantly, she'd rebuilt something she didn't realize she'd lost: her sense of herself as someone who creates, who builds, who contributes beyond caregiving. When she poured her coffee the next morning, it was still hot, because this time she wasn't rushing. She was building. One small decision at a time. One imperfect action after another. The kitchen looked the same. The noise level hadn't changed, but something fundamental had shifted. Wealth, she realized, wasn't just about the money. It was about agency, about looking at your days and recognizing your own power to shape them, about modeling for your children what it looks like to want something and work toward it, even when the path isn't clear. The women who succeed in this space aren't superhuman. They're not more talented or connected or lucky. They're just willing to start before they feel ready. To lead in public, to adjust when something doesn't work, and try a different angle instead of quitting entirely. They understand that progress isn't linear, that some weeks you'll make more than you expected, and some weeks you'll wonder why you're bothering, that the most important muscle you're building isn't business savvy, it's resilience. The ability to keep showing up when the results are slow and the doubt is loud. She thought about that first cold cup of coffee, how defeated she'd felt that morning, questioning whether she had anything valuable to offer, how impossible the whole thing had seemed from where she was standing. And then she thought about where she was now, at the finish line, but firmly on the path, making progress that 6 months ago would have seemed like fantasy. Tell us what part of this story resonated with you most and where you're watching from. Your journey might just inspire the next one, because somewhere right now, another mother is staring at a cold cup of coffee, asking herself if she can really build something of her own. And the answer is yes. Not because it's easy, not because the timing is perfect, but because the distance between wondering and doing is smaller than fear makes it seem. The wealth that matters builds quietly, in margins and moments, in small, brave decisions that compound over time, in the recognition that you don't have to choose between being present and being ambitious, that both can coexist if you're willing to build something designed for the life you're actually living. Tell us which country or city you're watching from. See you in the next video.